ecological.
Yeah, BBC investigation has found that water company discharged sewage on days when it wasn't raining, which is illegal. The practice,
So welcome Charlotte Sawyer, director of Rave for the Avon, an environmental documentary currently gaining momentum across the UK and heading out to the USA maybe, which is unbelievably exciting for a UK indie doc. So yeah, tell me about this exciting new thing that's going on in America. I think it's an interview on a station for now, but it's just so important for people to understand the environmental movement is very much alive out there. People are hungry and they want to see they've got the same issues as us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me on the podcast, Felicity. And yeah, I'm a big fan. And yeah, it's really great. We had we screened the film at FIPA Doc in France, Biarritz in France, and the French spirit really connected with the kind of Bristol spirit that the film is about. The Rave for the Avon is kind of about people who love and fight for their river, but in very Bristol ways. And yeah, so the French sentiment, people in the audience were really kind of excited about it, and there was an applause, and I heard a brava, and that was really amazing. And then this American producer came up to us and said, Americans would love this. They would love the joy, the kind of intimacy of all these wonderfully quirky, because my film is a tapestry of all the many people who connect with the river, fight for the river. And there's so many great personalities and a great sense of community. And so she said, Americans would just love the quirky British characters. We love British people. And also that Americans really love the diversity that's in the film. Because being a patch of the Bristol urban Avon, I know that in the UK there's a bit of a funny narrative that people who wild swim, as we call it wild swimming. In other countries, people just swim in nature, but in the UK, we only have access to about 3% of riverbanks by public right of way. So maybe that's why there's this idea that a swimmer in nature is someone who might be kind of white and middle class, maybe retired, and it might be a hobby for them, which is absolutely fine. But in the Bristol urban Avon, it is a way of life for people from all walks of life. And it is so important to them, and they have such a connection to the river. And so the film really cuts across that narrative, which I think the American kind of audience might really appreciate as well.
So yeah, we're part of a campaign called Save Our Avon.
Do you guys know the mermaid who swims down the river with the big boat?
Yeah, we do know the mermaid. So yeah, getting married to the river. Going to be Mrs. Avon.
Bring it back in.
It's like it doesn't look like it.
Sometimes the levels are worse than others.
This, I believe, used to say prohibited.
When did this first arrive?
Possibly in response to the commotion we've been causing by the campaign.
The energy around this film, publicly speaking, is very exciting. Can you tell me, first of all, how it's all going in the UK, because there's more and more screenings being booked, isn't there? And then take me back to where it all started.
Yeah, so my dream for this film, my real hope was that people would gather in cinemas to watch it. And I mean, films in cinemas are just so special because it's that sense of being immersed in what it's like to swim in the river. It's all the sounds that call to something quite subconscious, and that's why people need to go out in nature, because that calming, that immersive effect. And just to also watch in community, because I think the big narrative in this film is how joyful it is to swim in community, to campaign in community, to share in other people's creative expression of their love for the river, of how much they care about it, their connection to it. So, and I think that's why it's been really impacting people in cinemas. And so we'll have a screening and invite people from the local Rivers Trust or Surfers Against Sewage, or just someone from the swimming community, so that then the conversation can actually just be directed to what's going on locally. Because I think you know, we had this lovely review from The Guardian, a lovely 4-star review, yes, lovely 4-star review from The Guardian, where they said that, you know, campaigning never looked so joyful. And I do think that's because there is so much joy in Bristol. There's so much creative expression. There's a very unique culture of protest in Bristol, which I think is really special. But also in the film, I do give time to show those moments in between moments where people are supporting each other, connecting, having fun, you know, having a joke. And yeah, I think it's people in cinemas have just been able to share in that joy together and feel excited about campaigning, because you can feel so overwhelmed.
Well, we're so used to images, aren't we, of people being bundled in the back of police cars. And that's not 99% of protest is nothing like that.
Exactly. It's people showing up and expressing their shared love for nature. And yeah, and then, you know, I think in the way that we can kind of use art and express ourselves with art, it just helps us to go to a different place where it can kind of be a balm to that anger and that frustration. So yeah, so the cinema run has been really fantastic, and that has been my hope for the film.
And it's been word of mouth, hasn't it? Because people are just talking about it and more cinemas are booking it. And I'm getting emails from lots of action groups wanting to put it on at their local picture house. And
Oh, nice.
Oh, I swim in the river most days, rain or snow. If I don't do this, I'm going to go nuts.
Oh, I hear you. I'm like,
That was nice, tingly. Oh, God. You cried this week, yeah. We're just there for each other, and the water takes the pain away.
so take me back to the beginning where it all began for you.
Yeah, so I saw an advert for a filmmaker from a mermaid, and she said she was swimming along the Avon. She needed a filmmaker. I'm so lucky enough to live right next to the river. I can see the river from my house. It's so beautiful. It's such a special patch of river there in Bristol, because you've got, you know, Bristol, it's busy, it's densely populated, it's very urban, it's great, you know, lots going on. But this huge river kind of runs through the city, and then you go down this valley where I live and there's no traffic, you can hear the birds. It really opens out to the countryside, but you're still in the city, you know, and it's not a fancy part of the city, it's just normal people. Everyone kind of walks or cycles to the river, and then it's just this gorgeous place that people swim. And so I was like, I'm a filmmaker, I would love to capture that. And so I filmed her, and I was a fair weather swimmer. I would just dip in the summer. I knew not to put my head under, but I'm a bit ashamed that I didn't really inquire as to why. I just kind of knew there was something wrong with the water and I'd get sick. So when I was filming her and she was speaking to all these campaigners, I was astounded. This was back in 2021, before, you know, our understanding of how polluted our rivers are was at the forefront. And so I was astounded and I was angry, but I was more angry at myself for knowing so little. And also, Lindsey the mermaid is the most fantastic person. She's so creative, she's so passionate, she's so energetic. And so I just thought, we made a little short film about citizen science, but then I thought, I have to follow you more, you're incredible. But then, because of that unique community in Bristol, I just saw more people. I met more people who were kind of this poet who wanted to marry the river. I heard 3 days before this wedding that there was going to be a wedding. I just said, can I film you, please? And these people testing the water, you know, delivering themselves, a guy who won't pay his bill. So I just heard, I think it's because I'm local, I just heard of all these amazing things happening. But there's just quite a cohesive thing of that it's just this Bristol way of not accepting the status quo, taking things into their own hands, but also being very creative and wacky about it.
I really, really enjoyed the film, I must admit. It was so refreshing to see a documentary that's talking about something extremely serious, which affects all our health, and yet being able to balance it with such joy and such human connection and creativity, as you say. And it's kind of like this common value that really does transcend all the political sphere. Like you saw it when the Conham bathers were in the Bath Council putting their case to the council. There wasn't a single political party that didn't agree with them. They all got up and supported it because we all have this common value. Like there was that wonderful man as well who said, water is being human or something, didn't he? It was just such a perfect thing that he said, how he summed it up. And it was bureaucracy that just stopped it. It was just, there wasn't a single person that didn't. So you've got all these thousands of people going, yes, we want to clean up the River Avon. And this one man who was able to say it's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think in our context, there is a specific bureaucracy, but on the whole, it's kind of, I think the wider issue is that we are quite disconnected, in the modern society from the stunning nature that's around us. We're quite cut off, especially in the UK, in England, I think we only have access to about 8% of the countryside in England as the general public. We're so cut off from it. So as ordinary people who aren't greedy and making billions of profits from having an extractive attitude towards nature, as ordinary people who would love to connect with nature and care about it and value it, we're so cut off, so we don't get to notice what's going on. And there's so little money invested in testing and understanding the health of the river. So it's kind of, and then the legislation is so weak. So it is quite a comprehensive issue, but I think the power of this film is that it's less about the bureaucracy happens and the protest moment happens, but I think really the film is about people's relationship to the river and how intrinsic it is, and that I think is what will change things in the long term, because you have water companies now saying that we don't have the right to swim in the ocean, and thankfully we're finally realising what they truly think. And so I think the more people that can connect with nature, I mean, I know it's not safe to swim because of the pollution, but the more people that can go and find the rivers and spend time and help with citizen science, the more that decision makers can know that we don't view rivers as a resource. We view them as in relationship to us. And I mean, we've just had the first river being given granted personhood, the River Ouse. So things are changing. This attitude and this perspective of how we are connected to nature, hopefully, is just going to make its way to where the decisions are being made.
Onto agenda petition debate to address sewage pollution in the Avon.
I owe £1,091.
He's not paying his bills because he's not getting the service.
I don't agree that that's the case with Wessex Water.
Okay.
And we can talk about that now.
Oh, so,
You've got to get in the water at some point.
Okay.
The fury I felt at the Conham swimmers being knocked back, was so upsetting, because you sort of think, oh, great, everyone's there, but you're quite right, and it's naive to think that it would be just one person standing in their way. There's so many things to understand. It's complicated. I was amazed that you got Wessex Water to actually be on camera, actually, which was good of them. It shows that they have humans working for them, and that they weren't necessarily saying what we wanted them to say, but it was still a positive that they were there.
Well, I think it more shows how blatantly they know that they can act with impunity. I think they can just throw out all these statements, and they know that there's nothing, it's not going to come back to bite them, because the legislation is so weak currently.
But yes, there really is no accountability. That is true. Yeah, I did notice that he wasn't particularly able to look them in the eye, but it's it is what it is. But I was just uplifted by the whole thing with Lindsey,
Oh.
the mermaid, with her dog and her enormous inflatable poo, which is worth the ticket price alone. Absolutely. So let's talk about our wonderful panels that we've got coming up because you've got some amazing people. How about you announce our special guest at Harbour Lights in Southampton?
Yeah, we have a really incredible kind of advocate who's come on board, and she's a Bristol legend, comedian Jade Adams, and you might know her from Strictly, you might know her from TV 'cause she's an actress as well, and she's a passionate swimmer. You know, she swims in nature. She cares deeply about this, but she also brings a really great voice from the kind of, I mean, I hate using these terms, but like the working class perspective, in the sense that, you know, people who swim do need it, you know, and it's for health and well-being. And there are people who can't afford to go to the gym, and they do want to go and swim in the river or swim in the ocean or swim in a quarry or a lake, you know, but they don't have access to it because there's not rights of access or because it's not safe. And she speaks so well to that perspective that it's not just a hobby, it really is a way of life. So, and also she's hilarious. So she's joined us.
Just to go back to your character, and I'm so sorry, I forget his name.
Frank.
Sorry, what was his name?
Frank,
yeah. I mean, he was so moving. And when he said, oh, his house was colder than the river because he couldn't afford to heat it, you know, and then he wept for what the prospect of the river would be. And I really think, again, it was so moving and so touching to see someone who was powerless yet so powerful.
Yeah, Frank's incredible. And he talks like that all the time. I swim with him and I just always just feel like I should bring my audio recorder with me because he's such a poetic man. We'll meet for a swim and he'll give me like a book of poetry or something, or like he'll print out an article and say, have you read this? And yeah, he's incredible. And it's just, for him, it's a way of life.
This will be my first time swimming in the river. A little bit nervous. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Let's go. You never want to get out. Like mummy.
But I like to go underwater.
Whereas I know how clean this river is and I don't go underwater.
And I love it. And I feel nice and warm and love it.
You've also got some amazing action groups that you're working with, like at Henley, there's Greener Henley, who are going to be setting up the panel, and you're going to be at all the panels as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
So that's very exciting. And do you want to tell me about any other guests that you've got coming along?
Yes, we have the Goddess of the Y who's coming to the Greenwich screening on the 27th of March, and that will be really exciting. So River Action are kind of running that event with us, and they're launching a kind of Friends of the Thames group where all the Thames communities are joining up and are kind of pooling all of their energy and creativity. So the Goddess of the Y, who's in the film, who's this giant puppet, is going to come and do a ceremony with the water, and that's going to be really exciting. And it's really fun because actually the River Ooze came to one of our screenings in Lewes near Brighton. And yes, at the Q&A, one of the speakers, she brought a bucket of the ooze and she kind of poured it in and held a mic to it so the ooze could kind of speak for itself. And it's this great way of kind of, you know, I think the reason that Meg married the river and the reason that kind of people do these little ceremonial things is that another thing is I think we have lost ceremony around nature that helps us to reflect on that relationship. And so that, it's going to be really fun. We're going to go from the Thames, do a water ceremony and then kind of parade to the river, and we'll have poetry and music. And, you know, I think this, you know, campaign, you know, there's a lot of difficulty around campaigning. It's not all easy, but, you know, we can focus on the joy as well to help us get through all the difficult parts.
Yes, absolutely. And there is no better place, and I know I would be biased, but than a cinema, than bringing people together because you're in meditation, you're in communion in a way that you don't normally get to be with people. You're quiet, your phones are off, you're focused, and then you can all literally celebrate together afterwards with a cup of tea in the bar, and because that's what our green screens do. We encourage everyone to stay and talk after the panel. My worst expectation is that people will go home feeling bereft. And I don't want that. I want people to understand that they come to the green screen, they learn what they can do in their community, and then they connect.
Yeah, I love, and I think that's why it's amazing to gather together in a cinema, because your emotions become so much more expansive because it's shared and it's amplified, and it's really special to see films in cinemas. So
it really is. Charlotte, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming along today, and just keep onwards and upwards with Rave On for the Avon.
Oh, thank you so much.
Now Meg is going to make her vows. Do you call on all the courage and determination you possess to raise awareness of the issues facing this and every river? I do.
Thank you for watching Picture House Cinema's unique video content. Hit the subscribe button to be kept up to date with our movie news, cast and crew interviews, highlights, trailers, and lots more.